That's a question that can easily be answered with a series or a list of cliches. A woman who believes in herself and strives for the best and helps others, and that's all true, obviously. But they're cliches for a reason. They're you can very easily, as an individual, get lost in the cliche, get lost in the generalization. Think about a wise woman. I think about a woman who is able to simultaneously take herself out of the center of discussion, but also use herself as the center of discussion, if that makes sense. So looking at women writers who can talk about border identities or transnational identities, where you see an idea about what it is to be a woman globally speaking, but you're simultaneously challenging the idea that there's a global definition of femininity or feminism. The women who are actively challenging notions that in order to better themselves or their own societies or cultures, that they have to do away with those cultures and supplant them with other ones. And so you have women challenging, the age-old notion that global women are victims of their own cultures, and that the cultures themselves are at fault. And so they find ways of being radical while also being traditional in some respects. And those are the women, I think, from whom I derive most inspiration, both in scholarship and teaching, and just and even entertainment and business. Is seeing those women who don't ever really accept status quo, except as sort of an entry point into a cultural conversation about selfhood.
A wise woman is someone who respects herself and feels empowered to go out in the world and learn and do what she wants to do, who knows that she can accomplish what she wants.
So it takes a lot of courage to be a good scholar, and it's not enough just to be wise like you can think of things, but you really have to, when you do this kind of research, when you show your knowledge, you're really kind of taking a risk. And what makes these women wise is because they articulate, like they could think the thoughts, and they maybe are smart, but we never know what they thought if they didn't have the courage to say the normal ways that we've studied rhetoric are inadequate and unrepresentative. And so when the act of sharing their wisdom requires, the possibility of being severely criticized. So what I like about those women, whether they were my grandmother, my mother, these great scholars, is that the wisdom and the courage to express their wisdom and to live out their wisdom are just inextricable.
A wise woman is someone who isn't afraid to enter into the public sphere and speak her mind rather than just standing on the sidelines. She's not afraid of what other people will say about her or to her, and doesn't fear conflict, but seeks peaceful revolution, and wants to understand and appreciate other people's viewpoints while still engaging in conversation and inserting her own voice in that conversation.
I think a lot of times comes with age and with experience, which is really to say that you have to live life and go out and do things in order to acquire wisdom. We don't normally equate, I don't think, wisdom with sort of like book knowledge. And so education I think is important, and study and scholarly things like that. But to me, wisdom and being wise, and especially women, it comes just through experience, being out in the world and learning things about yourself and about how the world operates, and just about how life is in general. So I think that's how I would define wise, which opens really wise women up into a lot of women. Some of whom might not be, the most bookish intelligent, or even have university degrees or things like that, but wisdom is definitely accessible, I think, to all manner of women.
Well, I've given this some thought. I think it's such a good question and such an interesting one. And for me, a wise woman is someone who is very knowledgeable, even erudite, with specialized knowledge, and who has achieved real things in life, but who also has this sense of human reality and what the complex human realities and situations are, and who has a balanced approach to them. Somebody who's both immensely knowledgeable and grounded at the same time. To me, that's a wise woman.
To me, being a wise woman means that you don't assume that your way is better than anyone else's way, that you allow for a possibility that wisdom can manifest itself in different ways in different individuals.
I think I would define a wise woman by a couple of different factors. To me, this metaphor of like the sapling in the wind, I think works really well. And so somebody who's strong enough that she can bend with the wind, or she can compromise but not break. And I think what that does is allows for a wise woman to make mistakes, to learn how to compromise, but still have this kind of core of her own being, or be able to stand by her beliefs and believe in them strongly, while at the same time learning from her mistakes, learning from others, incorporating difference and just diversity into her life. But like I said, not breaking. So being able to kind of sway in the wind, and to grow, of course, but not break.
To me, a wise woman is someone that understands the levels of oppression through patriarchy, but also finds ways to look at this through intersectional identities, through stuff like sexuality, gender, of course, racial issues, who's able to locate these various systems of oppression, not through only gender, but through other identities as well.
My definition of a wise woman is someone who empowers others, makes others feel capable and confident about what they're doing, and someone who leads by example. The wise woman shows others, hey, this is what I expect of myself, and you should be able to expect the same thing of yourself.
To me, I think a wise woman is one who knows that there's inequality in the world and recognizes that there are systems that oppress not just women, but all people. And these are women who, knowing that, live in the system while working to change the system. So these would be sort of ordinary women, usually, who go into jobs that are dominated by men and who make it easier for other women to follow behind them.
I think a wise woman is someone who can change roles really easily. In our culture, I guess, women are typically asked to switch roles more frequently.
I get to talk about my mom now because I think she's quite wise. Her wisdom and her experience and her knowledge has really been something for me that has helped me to grow throughout the years, and just really to use her as counsel and as a sounding board and as support. Sometimes I didn't always want, her input or interference, depending on how you put it, but her wisdom has always been something that I can draw from, and I know that later into life she's still expanding her horizons still, so seeking out new experiences and new things with that. So that's always been something. I definitely consider my mother to be a wise woman who is able to hopefully pass some of that on to. One of the things that she's taught me is to take opportunities, to create circumstances that are beneficial, and to if you feel like something needs to be said or something needs to be done, you have to do it because you can't necessarily think that other people will.
Well, I had fun deciding who my wise woman was or is, and it's actually somebody really associated with TCU. In fact, I know that you, Cassia Jackson, will have heard of her. It's Winifred Bryan Horner, who was both my colleague and my great friend when I first arrived at TCU. And I cannot tell you how much fun we had laughing, but also talking about life and the world. She was a wonderful model of academic success and academic excellence. She also liked to talk with other women about how they could shape their careers, how they could think about them. But she always made time for friends, for laughter, for her family, who were very important to her. And she has this wonderful earthiness and laugh. And so for me, Winifred, my friend, is a wise woman.
I would add Oprah to this list. Oprah is one of my favorite women ever. She does so much. People tease me about this, by the way, but she does so much for educating girls in South Africa, educating women, men and women really. She has these things that she calls life classes around North America, where she has public speakers come and grapple with really hard issues, like finding your purpose, which may sound really silly and vague, but she explores what it means to be human.
A number of women can be wise in different scenarios, right? So it's not like an all or nothing thing where you have to be wise all the time. It's that, your mom can be wise in this situation and your peers can be wise in another situation. And so I think it just depends on not assuming that your way is the best way, and hearing other people and hearing the voices that are surrounding you.
As an early Americanist, I frequently read women who have been dead for centuries. And so there's this one woman who I really look back to in my master's program, who I discovered, Hannah Griffiths. She was a Quaker poetess. She lived during the American Revolutionary War, and she was a spinster, and she never married. And as all my friends get married, or as there's like 5 single women in the department, sometimes it's a little rough. Everyone's like, oh, you'll just meet here, when you meet somebody, you'll know, or like, you just haven't met the right man yet. And it's like, oh, give me a break. And so Hannah Griffiths wrote this really great poem called To Sophronia. And in it, she has very clearly received the same type of advice I got. You'll just have to meet somebody, you'll be fine, you'll get married, and your life will be happiness. And so she writes this very biting, sarcastic poem, rejecting this advice and saying, well, if marriage is so great, then go off and enjoy it, but basically leave me alone. And it's just so remarkable to reach back through history and connect to these women, and to feel that I'm not the only woman who's ever felt that way. And so, to me, she's that sapling in the wind, right? So being a spinster during the American Revolutionary War, the 18th century was not easy. It was very financially difficult. You were just kind of by yourself, especially if you were independent, or your brothers didn't give you any money. And so to me, she's that sapling in the wind, bending back and forth, but never breaking.
One woman who really embodies those ideals for me was Gwen Stefani. When I was growing up, there were like Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera. Most of the female pop celebrities were very much hypersexualized, and I went to a No Doubt concert, and Gwen Stefani sang a song called Just a Girl while doing one-handed push-ups, holding the microphone with her other hand, and just the idea of someone who could be both sexual and classy and empowered and really about the strength of women was important to me at that age.
And of course, the best example of that is my wife, who I think is a lawyer, who I've always said is the brains of the family, but I also respect her ideas of putting all that wisdom to work for the good of our children and our grandson. So even though I have this whole spectrum, the denominator's a common one. Smart, but having the courage to articulate that intelligence, and that's what it means to me to be really wise, to make it work and let other people understand it.
One of my favorite books of all time is called Borderlands, that she wrote, and in that she's a Chicana lesbian, and in that she fights against the male machismo from the Hispanic culture, but she also doesn't fight it from just a gender standpoint. She fights it through a sexual standpoint and through a racial standpoint as well. And seeing where those intersections connect and also collide for her was very important for me to understand how these different systems of oppression work throughout all of society.
Firstly, I quite respect Wendy Davis, beyond the fact that her story is really moving. I think that she really works to advance the rights and civil rights and values of women of Texas.
But maybe the most famous example would be like Sheryl Sandberg, who went into the tech companies as a CEO and as sort of a head of these departments that are usually run by men, and managed to do as much as she could to make sure that women had an easier time following behind her, by being a mentor or by just sort of breaking that glass ceiling and being the first and the best.
From scholarship, I tend to gravitate again to those women on the borders, the ones who challenge the way that we think of absolute identities standard and stable ideas. So in writing, I gravitate to women like Diana Abujamra, who's a Jordanian American writer, and her novels that talk about food traditions and ways that we keep heritages alive while still challenging them as well. And in scholarship, women like Inderpal Gruwal at Yale, who we recently had her here at TCU, but who sort of challenge again this idea of a monolithic global woman or global femininity. Those are the women really that I kind of turn to again and again. Those types of women who are opening up a conversation and essentially giving us all a seat at that table.